Good evening and welcome to the December 17th meeting of the Sayreville Board of Education. Thank you for coming. Public notice will be read at the start of the open public portion of the meeting at 7:30. Please rise for the pledge to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Ms. Hill, roll call, please.
Mr. Balca?
Here.
Mrs. Batko? Mrs. Bloom?
Here.
Mr. Callahan? Mr. Esposito?
Here.
Mrs. Kenny? Here. Ms. Rubio?
Here.
Mr. Walsh?
Here.
Mr. Syak?
Here. Can I have a motion to retire into executive session?
So moved.
By Mrs. Bloom, do I have a second?
Second.
By Mr. Walsh. Would you read the resolution, please, Ms. Hill?
Whereas Section 8 of the Open Public Meetings Act, Chapter 231, Public Law 1975, permits the exclusion of the public from a meeting in certain circumstances. And whereas this public body is of the opinion that such circumstances presently exist, now therefore be it resolved by the Board of Education of the Borough of Sayreville, County of Middlesex, State of New Jersey, as follows. The public shall be excluded from discussion of and action upon the hereinafter specified subject matters. The general nature of the subject matter to be discussed is as follows. Personnel, including but not limited to agenda items, a student matter, negotiations related to the Sayreville Education Association, and the superintendent's contract. It is anticipated at this time that the above stated subject matter shall be made public at such time as the need for non-disclosure no longer exists. This resolution shall take effect immediately.
Ms. Hill, can we also add negotiations with the South Amboy Board of Education?
Okay. Mr. Balco?
Yes.
Mrs. Bloom?
Yes.
Mr. Esposito?
Yes.
Mrs. Kenny?
Yes.
Ms. Rubio?
Yes.
Mr. Walsh?
Yes.
And Mr. Syak?
Yes. Okay, the meeting is closed. We will resume our regular public meeting at 7:30. Thank you. Okay, good evening, everyone. Welcome to the December 17th meeting of the Sayreville Board of Education. Thank you for coming. Take notice, this public meeting of the Sayreville Board of Ed was transmitted to the Home News Tribune and the Star Ledger in accordance with Chapter 231, Public Law 1975. Further, in accordance with NJSA 10:4-621, a copy is posted outside the Secretary's office and also filed with the Clerk of the Borough of Sayreville. Please rise for the pledge to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Ms. Hill, roll call, please.
Mr. Balco?
Here.
Mrs. Batko? Mrs. Bloom?
Here.
Mr. Callahan? Mr. Esposito?
Here.
Mrs. Kenny? Here. Ms. Rubio?
Here.
Mr. Walsh?
Here.
Mr. Syak?
Here. Could you summarize executive session for us, please?
The board discussed personnel, including but not limited to agenda items, a student matter, negotiations related to the Sayreville Education Association, and negotiations for a contract with the South Amboy Board of Education, and the superintendent's contract.
Okay, thank you very much. We'll move on to correspondence. There's none on the agenda, which means we move to approval of minutes. Can I have a motion that the minutes of the November 19th and December 3rd meetings be approved?
So moved.
By Mrs. Bloom, do I have a second?
Second.
By Mr. Walsh, are there any remarks or comments on the minutes? Hearing none, roll call, Ms. Hill, please.
Mr. Balca?
Yes on November, abstain on December.
Mrs. Bloom?
Yes.
Mr. Esposito?
Yes.
Mrs. Kenny?
Yes.
Ms. Rubio?
Yes.
Mr. Walsh?
Yes.
Mr. Syak?
Yes. Okay, we'll move on to our student council representative reports. Mr. Farley, we'll start with you.
Good evening. I hope everyone had a great Thanksgiving. The holiday season is now among us. The fall play, It's a Wonderful Life, had a great turnout both nights. I saw many familiar faces, including Mr. Syak and Ms. Rubio, along with several alumni and staff. The Student Council is organizing a clothing and food drive contest among the homerooms throughout the school. The homeroom that brings the most food and clothing wins a bagel breakfast for the entire homeroom. Also this week, Student Council is having a Spirit Week right before winter break to bring on the holiday spirit. The Heroes and Cool Kids had their first trip to the UES on December 4th. We taught the fifth grade students at the Samsel Upper Elementary School about resilience. This is one of 3 trips that we are taking to the SUES this year. Recently, SWMHS AFJ ROTC cadets had a successful trip to Washington, D.C., where they toured the Pentagon and other significant places in D.C. and met a Secretary of the Air Force. Just this past weekend, the Future Business Leaders of America Club had a very busy Saturday. The Community Service Project team hosted their Together We Can event where they collected over 2,000 pounds of non-perishable food that will be donated during the holiday season. Also, the Sayreville FBLA chapter co-hosted with Montgomery High School for the Montgomery Business Festival, where FBLA members from throughout the state interacted with each other, networked, and learned about different areas within business from keynote speakers in the business world. Sayreville received notoriety from the FBLA New Jersey state chapter from both of these events, which is a great honor. Many of these members are working very hard, and there are more great things to come from this club. As a member myself, I was unable to attend either of these events due to having a basketball scrimmage in South Brunswick the same day, which leads me to my next subject. All winter sports are underway. Each sport had their tryouts before Thanksgiving break and are currently preparing for upcoming games. For basketball, I've had scrimmages last week and this week. I actually had a scrimmage today and went home quickly to grab something to eat and change before coming here tonight. Our first regular season game is at Edison this Friday at 7, while I believe the girls have their home opener on Friday as well. On another note, high school students attended an assembly regarding the vaping epidemic and its harmful effects in teenagers and young adults yesterday. Lastly, progress reports will be issued on Friday, December 20th, and I'd like to wish you all a happy holiday.
Very nice.
Thank you very much, and the same to you.
Stephen, have you grown taller?
My mom was just talking about that earlier today, and she's like, wow, I think you grew
You
again."
have. I'm going to say at least an inch. I always look up to you, but today I hurt my neck looking up to you.
Ms. Mayor, I think you've grown taller as well. Could you report on the middle school, please?
Good evening. Winter sports kickoff started last week with a home wrestling match versus Spotswood. Boys and girls basketball started their season today against Linwood. The girls team had an amazing comeback, 30-26, and the boys were defeated with a final score of 43-63. Extracurricular activities. Student Council Spirit Week is going on this week at Sayreville Middle School. Monday was Disney Day. Tuesday is everyone's favorite day, Pajama Day. Wednesday is Ugly Sweater Day. Thursday is Decade Day, and Friday is Bomber Spirit Day. The music department has been rehearsing daily for Susical the Musical, which will be performed in January 2020. The PTO is hosting the holiday fair during all lunch periods until Friday. Students have the opportunity to buy all for the holidays. The Spirit Club is hosting a door decorating contest this week. The annual pep rally will be taking place this Friday during school. The students will participate against the staff in a knockout contest. The teams scrimmage each other and the cheerleaders perform their halftime routines. The wrestling team demonstrates some moves for the students as well. PTO school stores opened every Friday during lunch periods. We are sad to see Ms. Johnson, our vice principal, leave. We would like to wish her the best of luck in Howell. They are very lucky to have her. Thank you, and I hope you have a wonderful holiday. See you in the next year.
Very nice.
Thank you very much. And I know you're sad to see Ms. Johnson leave, as are we, because she's been a phenomenal vice principal for us, but I'm happy to report that we've got someone right behind her who's going to be just as phenomenal. As a matter of fact, she's here tonight. So you'll get a chance to meet your new vice principal. All right, any questions for our student council representatives? All right. Again, you're welcome to stay if you would like. If you want to go make merry for the holidays, finish some Hanukkah shopping, Christmas shopping, you're also welcome to do that as well. All right? See you guys.
Good job, guys.
Thank you,
Great
guys.
job.
Great work, as always.
Okay, so next up on the agenda are my comments. And even though there's not that many people out in the audience, I'm still going to come forward because I know that we videotape these meetings. And this is really an important meeting for us as the board and for the district as a whole. So even though this is the concluding meeting of the life of this board, in December, and the new board, even though we're not going to change, is going to be seated in January. This meeting, even though it's the concluding meeting, is really setting the stage for this. Thank you. Is really setting the stage. Okay, we're not going to use that.
No, you don't need it.
But the people in the back can't hear you.
You're good. You're good.
I'll just talk a little louder.
It may
People
not
in the
be-
parking lot
It
can't
may not
hear
be on the video. So what if we turn that one off? There you go.
Okay, how's that?
Better.
Much better. Okay, so even though this is the concluding meeting of the life of this Board of Education, what we're really doing tonight is setting the stage for the next decade in the school district. And we're doing it by two particular items that are up for board consideration tonight. So the first item is our referendum proposal. And when we look out at our school district, first of all, we embarked on a strategic planning session about 3 years ago, which was the Vision 2030 strategic planning session. And we identified at that time a core need for facilities in this school district. We identified that our roofs needed repair. We identified that our windows were drafty. We identified that we have HVAC systems that need repair. And we identified that if we really want to be a 21st century school district, if we really want to prepare for Vision for 2030, if we really want to prepare our students for 2030, we have to do it at an educational facility that meets the needs of the students that we're educating, not the students that we've educated in the past. So with that as a backdrop, this summer the board conducted a retreat to talk about how do we accomplish that? How do we go forward with that? And what we looked at is that one of the major needs that we need in the district, in addition to all of the facility needs, just to maintain our facilities, we looked at two additional things. We looked at air conditioning, because we spend a great deal of our time in days in our buildings when the temperature reaches into the 80s and 90s, and students can't learn in that environment. It's just not conducive for student learning. And when you look at the number of days that we get with additional heat, you start out probably around May 15th, and that runs till June 20th, June 25th. But then you come back in September, and it starts again around September 7th or September 8th. And if you take this year as an example, it actually ran to October 5th, October 10th. And all of those days that the temperature is rising, students are not learning in a quality environment. And it's just simply, the expectations for our students today are simply not the same as they were a decade or 2 or 3 decades ago. So we're looking at a referendum tonight to not only address the core facility needs of windows and HVAC systems and electrical systems and roofs, but we're also looking at a referendum that will provide air conditioning to all of our schools in the school district. In addition to that, we also saw a need for our special education students. We have been embarking on an initiative as part of our strategic plan to bring back as many students with special needs here to Sayreville. We don't want them educated outside of our school district, if at all possible. And there's two reasons for that. The first reason, from a financial standpoint, it's costly. Every time we send a student out, it costs us more money to educate that child out of district than it does here in Sayreville. But the second reason is that we firmly believe, whether you're a special education student or a regular education student, there is nothing better than a Sayreville education, and one that's done here in district. So we started bringing those students back to provide a lower cost education, but also a better education here that is on par with the education we provide every other child. But in addition to that, state law requires that we educate some of our students with special needs up until the age of 21. So as part of this referendum, we're also launching a 18 to 21 facility where we can provide those students with the individualized needs that they need, for the same reasons that we brought those students back to Sayreville in the first place. Doing it here is less costly, and nothing is better than a Sayreville education. Once a bomber, always a bomber. Now, when you look at that, and I know we've looked at some of the survey data, that's probably one of the pieces in the survey that we've got feedback on, why are we doing this? Why are we investing the additional money? For those of you who have concerns or questions about that, we were just recognized at our last Board of Education meeting by the New Jersey Special Olympics as the only school in New Jersey, and we believe the only school in the country, to be recognized for the Unified Sports Program. The Unified Sports Program brings all of our students together, regardless of ability. So if you've got concerns about why are we investing in an 18 to 21 facility because that won't benefit my child, and I don't see the need for that, every child in Sayreville is our child. We're responsible as a board, we're responsible as a community for every single child in this school district. And it's up to us to provide the same educational opportunities to every single child, regardless of ability. That's what differentiates public education. That's what makes it different. So tonight you're going to see a presentation by our architects on what this referendum will look like. It's a result of not only board input, but also a survey that went out to our entire community, to our staff, to our parents, to our students. This referendum is no longer just a board initiative. This referendum was designed by our stakeholders. You've told us what you want in a referendum. We've heard you, and we've designed that referendum to meet the needs that you see for Vision 2030 for this school district. Now, we've still got a lot of work to do. We're hopefully going to authorize the referendum tonight, get our architects working on doing drawings, but the referendum will be held in September of 2020. We need people to come out and vote. We need them to come out and vote and support this initiative, because that's the only way this initiative is going to get passed. So if you are a strong proponent of this, if you've told us, yes, this proposal is what we want, yes, we don't want our children sweating, yes, we want the same educational opportunity for every single child in this district, regardless of ability, we need your help starting tonight. We need your help in convincing this community that our community has changed, our environment has changed, and what's expected of our students has changed. And that this school district can also change and continue to compete at a higher level than it ever has before. So now is the time to get engaged, and I look forward to the presentation of our architects tonight and sharing that with you with regard to the referendum. So that's phase one of a major decision by this board to go forward. But decisions such as this also take leadership. And leadership is something that this board has had a benefit of for a very long time under Dr. Labby. And as we look forward to this referendum, one of the things that we want to ensure is that this referendum is conducted and built, and hopefully if it's approved, constructed, under stable, high-quality leadership. So tonight we're also putting on the board's agenda a contract extension for our superintendent of schools that will extend his employment for the next 4.5 years, which is the maximum required by law, or maximum allowed by law. And we're doing that for several reasons. One, obviously, is the referendum. We want stable leadership. But it's more than that. When we look at where our district has come over the last 6 years under Dr. Labby's leadership, we're not the same district we were when he came into this position. Just think about the changes that have occurred under Dr. Labby's leadership. For starters, when you look at student achievement, I've talked a long time about comparable districts and why we're not meeting the same type of educational outcomes as districts that have our same demographics. Well, we're not only meeting those now, we're actually surpassing them. So from a student outcome perspective, standardized assessments, the results continue to go up, the results continue to improve, and the results continue to exceed our peers. We just announced at one of our previous meetings, about 2 meetings ago, the announcement of universal preschool. Now that grant was a team effort. It took several members of our team to put that grant together. But that grant took leadership. And our 3- and 4-year-olds, again, regardless of income, regardless of ability, will now have the opportunity in Sayreville to attend at no cost quality preschool right here in Sayreville, thanks to the leadership of Dr. Labby and his team. I mentioned the Unified Sports Program, another vision that our superintendent has made reality in this school district. The bringing back of special education students into the district. We have twice the number of students in our district today than when I joined the board in 1994. And we only have a fraction of the students who were out of district in 1994 out of district today. That number has actually decreased, despite the fact that our enrollment has gone up, because we can offer a better quality program here for less of a cost. In addition to that, you can talk about the accomplishments, you can talk about the academic outcomes, but there's another piece that always works with leadership, and that's what I'll call fit. Does the person fit with your community and with your school district? And one of the things that I think Dr. Labby has demonstrated successfully is that he fits in this school district. He is a Bomber. This is his home. And it's interesting because when we approved his last contract, he and I spoke, and one of his concerns was that it didn't take him to 55, which for those of you in public education know is a magic number for retirement. And the part that excites me now is, as we talked about this contract, he's now talking about 60, 65, trying to get him to 70. He's not there yet. We're still negotiating that one. But that's a result of the fit and the connection that he's built here with the Sayreville Public Schools. And probably the most outward sign of that connection was Dr. Labby's stint last year for 6 months as principal of Sayreville War Memorial High School, simultaneously while he was serving as superintendent of schools. And I watched the connections that you built with our students in that building, and they're still alive today. I was with you at the Renaissance program last week, and I watched you going through and high-fiving those students, and how much your words of gratitude and appreciation meant to them when you spoke, and the relationships that you've built with our faculty, our administrative team, our staff, to move an educational agenda forward. But more than moving an educational agenda forward, it's clear that you've demonstrated that your heart is here, not only with our students and with academic success, but with our staff and our community and our parents. So when you put that all together, it wasn't a hard decision for the board to say, we want this individual around for the long haul. As a matter of fact, I even spoke to a faculty member about a year ago who, when I talked about Dr. Labby, said, he sounds like a guy you want to keep around for a little while. So we're proceeding in that direction. So the contract, as I indicated, is a 4.5-year contract. It starts January 1. The salary will result in a market adjustment for him of $17,454 from his current present annual salary. And for those of you who may not be aware, the superintendent caps, which previously have restricted superintendent salaries and quite frankly have allowed Sayreville to compete, have now expired. So we're once again in a market where superintendents have the ability to move to other districts and an opportunity to increase their compensation and provide for their families. And we've heard a lot of feedback from staff members in our district that Dr. Labby's going to Edison, he's going to Jackson, he's going everywhere. Well, Dr. Labby's not going anywhere because he's made that very clear to me. But we also want to ensure that he's compensated fairly for his work as well. So the increase of $17,454 will bring his salary to approximately $222,000 for the 2019-20 school year. That is prorated. In addition to that, you should know that we looked at comparable districts that have already gone through this process. Of the 6 districts in the county which have already gone through this process, the salary that we are adjusting him to is right at the average mark. However, if you look at the districts, 4 of them that have gone through this process in the county that are of our same size, that were subject to our same cap, Dr. Labby is actually $10,000 below what those other superintendents are making. In addition, superintendents in New Jersey have an opportunity for merit pay, which would provide him, upon the attainment of goals, a 15% bonus. Dr. Labby and the board have mutually agreed that that doesn't work for Sayreville, and it's only going to divide the district, and it's not something that we want to entertain. And that is not something that we had to haggle with Dr. Labby on. It's something that Dr. Labby fully believes and supports and does not think is appropriate for Sayreville. Following the 2019-20 school year, Dr. Labby will receive a 2.5% increase each remaining year of the contract, and all other benefits remain the same. I also, as I mentioned before, pointed out that Dr. Labby served as the high school principal. Interim principals get $500 a day. Dr. Labby served for 100 days. That move saved this district $50,000. He just completed a stint as the interim Arlett School principal. He did that for approximately 25 days. If you look at $500 a day, that move saved the district $12,500. And I'll just close with this. He didn't do it to save the district money. That's an added bonus. But it brought him closer to our staff. It brought him closer to our students. It brought him closer to our pedagogy, closer to what's going on in the classroom. And each one of those experiences enables him to be an even better superintendent going forward. So as we have this meeting tonight, know that this is a historic moment for Sayreville and that we are setting the stage for Vision 2030 and the next decade of education here at Sayreville. Thank you. Mr. Vice President, do you have any comments? You don't have to stand up.
Thank you. No, listen, I will never say it as eloquently as you, but I've seen it firsthand myself at the grammar schools. When Dr. Labby walks in, the place lights up. Kids love him, parents love him, staff loves him. Yeah, we love him. I mean, he does a great job. He's a great guy. He's a great person, and he's a great educator. So I want to thank you for staying here with us, really.
Okay, we're moving on, and I think we now have some presentations. You have your district highlights.
Want to go run them real quick?
Run 'em
Right.
through.
Then we get to the architects.
Yep.
Okay, excuse me. Okay, you spoke about our unified games. We had our soccer tournament. It was a huge success. The camaraderie and the friendship between our student athletes was really moving. And I want to thank Mr. Nasser, Mr. Ivy, and all of the advisors and coaches for doing an amazing job. November 15th was bingo night at Arlith. That's where I saw Dr. Labby in action. I was a guest, whatever, picker, whatever you want to call it. I helped out that night.
Outstanding guest
It was
caller.
awesome. It was a great experience. And I'm going to be, in case you're wondering, in January, I'm going to be late for the band banquet. I'm Vanna White in the middle school for, what is that game?
Wheel of Fortune.
Wheel of Fortune. I'm Vanna White, so.
Sounds
I
like
may
a-
have to receive this.
Yeah.
Sounds like a career move might be there.
On November 20th, Eisenhower celebrated its 17th 50th anniversary celebration. Hopefully, this might be the last one. Faculty and staff and PTO did an outstanding job organizing the celebration. Guests were treated to a wonderful, wonderful performance by our high school choir. Excuse me. Our high school band did an amazing job. They had during the 100th annual Philadelphia Thanksgiving Day Parade. And so kudos to them. They're off to a great start again this year. Commend our third graders at Truman for their wonderful performance for the senior citizens at the Sacred Heart Annex. And this is the 5th year in a row that they've been doing that. The seniors love them. December 5th, Samsel Elementary School presented an internet safety parent workshop called What's App? And parents were informed of the dangerous apps that targets young students and how children are keeping them secret from educators and parents. So thank you to everyone involved for making that a success. That's a real important thing that as parents we all learn and keep up on. A couple more. We commend the SUES student ambassadors. Did a great job. They're collecting pajamas for those in need. Also the staff, parents of Truman School are collecting scarves and mittens for those in need in the Sayreville community. And finally, congratulations and thank you to our transportation department for representing our school district in the Sayreville Holiday Parade of Lights, which occurred last Sunday. I wasn't there, but you guys were there, and everyone said it was a really nice evening.
They did a great job of decorating the buses.
They did. That's great. That's all I got.
All right, thank you very much. We'll move on to our presentations. Cafeteria report.
Okay.
You can join us at the table if you will. It's up to you, wherever you feel more comfortable. Okay, that's easier. That's good.
All right, so tonight I'm going to go over the fiscal aspects of the food services department. Part of this over the last 3 years, where it was a little bit more back forward. So I'm going to review first our reimbursement rates from the state as well as from the federal year. So as our prices increase on our cost of goods, so is our reimbursement. We also did a comparison over participation over the last 3 years. We just looked at the first few months of the school year just to give you a consistent perspective. In 2017, you can see our breakfast participation was 8.76. So the 8.76, and you'll see last year, and this is pretty consistent through all 3 months, and I'm going to show you that it dropped down a little bit, but this year our participation is going back up. So we went from 8.76% to 7.46 to 9.33. And you'll see something similar for the lunch, from 42.85 dropped slightly to 42.64, and then jumped up again to 44.5. The same pattern in October. So we had 12.18 in 2017, dropped a little bit, then it jumped back up this year. Same on the lunch. I'm not going to read all the statistics, but you can see just overall now we're at 49% participation, which is a pretty significant improvement. I would also say it's really good when I compare it to other districts. I know that I've seen a lot of other districts that I review. They're averaging 40 to 45% participation, so we're exceeding that. And we can see in November, the same thing is still holding true. We're still over 49% participation. So that's a pretty good sign that whatever we're doing with the services department, the kids are responding well and they're participating. Now I have our summary of finances. So here I'm just taking a look back as well as a look forward. So I know it's kind of hard to see on the screen. However, over these few years, you can see that in the 15-16 school year, our net profit was only $24,000, but the next year it went up to $107,000. 17-18 went up to $148,000, and this past school year was $255,000. So that's a pretty significant jump for us, and the reason why is because we lowered our expenditures in comparison to our revenues. So even though our participation dropped down, our revenues still went up because of the increases in the reimbursements, but we cut back on waste and we cut back on spending. So we were able to match that drop in participation, so we were able to make more of a profit in that area. So that leaves us now at a point where we have almost 3 months worth of operating expenses in our fund balance. We're only allowed to have 3 months of operating expenses in our fund balance. So we're at a point where we have to start readjusting the program. So we have some challenges still. We have to address our negative balances, which we're working on. But we also have aging equipment. That's really the biggest thing, old equipment, old furniture like tables and chairs in some schools. So we're now in a place where we can actually put money back into these capital distributions. So that's something we started talking about in the finance committee. The one thing to note, if you see the very bottom line, we have the allowable fund balance. When our expenses increase, our allowable fund balance increases. So the more we spend, the more we're allowed to retain. So if we do spend more this year in equipment, we're able to retain more of that balance to use in the future year. And that's pretty much all I have on financials. Does anybody have any questions?
Erin, I was just wondering how we're doing with the lunch debt.
So we're still working on that. A big thing right now is getting the parents who have not applied for free reduced lunch to apply. So that's something that our director was working on, our assistant director is continuing to work on. So we're getting in contact with the parents, kind of keeping after them to get them to fill out the application so that we can start reducing that debt.
Well, I don't know if everybody is aware that, the Liquid Church paid off the students' lunch debt, which was a wonderful thing that they did. But I'm wondering if it's starting to build again. Is that?
It is.
Yeah.
It is, and that's a large reason. So we received that check, it was in the beginning to mid-October. As of October 15th, anybody that had free or reduced lunch in the prior year, they carried over up until that date, and then they dropped off. So if the parents didn't reapply, they dropped off. So that's what we're really working with. I think it was over 600 parents that didn't reapply. So we're trying to get them all to apply so we can get it corrected.
Okay, thank you.
Aaron, is any of that retroactive? If once they apply, any of those expenses that they had accrued when their application is submitted, isn't that retroactive?
So we thought it would be, unfortunately, we had to reach out to the state, and they said that
Yeah.
cap, it would allow us to do it remotely. So I think that's a conversation to have with the district, how we want to move forward with people who are eligible for free lunch and who are previously without free lunch.
Over the past 3 years, have the number of free, reduced, or paid lunches gone up or changed significantly, or no?
I don't have that on me. I think the percentage has changed a little bit each year. I know Dr. Shea works a lot in Title I, so I don't know if you know offhand what it was.
It's, I don't have the exact numbers, but I'm going to say it's district-wide, it's in the vicinity of 35 to 37%.
It's been steady the last couple
Yeah.
of years? Or?
It's, I think it's increased, but pretty insignificantly.
Probably one or two. I seem to recall a couple years ago, maybe around 33%.
Right, right.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's gone up maybe 1% or so a year.
Do you want to wait for the new director to be in place before, or will you be ready in January to talk about the equipment you need?
I think we can be ready in
Yeah,
January.
there's no reason to wait. Let's get it.
Because I have a lot of information already, but I brought that person on board as well, so.
Okay.
Have a thorough discussion.
Okay, good.
When you look at the additional 98,000 or so in revenue, is that price that we're getting? Is that additional lunches you plan on selling, a combination of both?
So I did use, I estimated growth based on where we're at right now, how we went from, 42% to 49%. So that's kind of where I tried to average out the last few years and to see if it was going up.
Okay. So you're basically just forecasting the same level of growth for next
So
year?
I didn't want to be overly optimistic.
Agreed.
So I think I went with 3.5% because it was a little bit lower than what we actually experienced so far this year.
Okay.
I know it's not for you to answer, but, so we have a lot of growth in breakfast, right? Is the new person, are we going to make sure they start concentrating on that? There's a lot of room
Absolutely.
there, right,
Yeah,
to
so
grow.
our breakfast went up a lot when we did breakfast in the classroom.
Yeah,
meal
yeah, they
in
like that.
schools. So I know it was something that the previous director was working on with the upper elementary school and high school. So we're going to continue on that route.
Any other questions on the cafeteria presentation with regard to the budget? All right, thank you, Ms. Hill. Okay, Dr. Labby, I think we have a special presentation that I alluded to earlier.
Yes, we do, Mr. Sack, and I'm honored to introduce to you Stephen Siegel, who represents the Spiesel Architectural Group Incorporated firm, who's going to go over with you the proposed facilities improvement referendum. Steve?
I think you pretty much covered it earlier. I don't know.
I'll send you my bill.
But, no, so all kidding aside, yes, my name is Steve Siegel. I have Barbara, Brandon, and Quinn. Quinn is actually one of our students from Marywood College. He's actually just here to join us tonight to see what we do. He's interning with us during the summer. He's also interning a little bit over the holiday break. So with that, I'll start with just a presentation on the high level, what we did initially. You're all aware we produced this pretty elaborate facility assessment report that listed a number of areas for improvement throughout the district. I will say that the district does a phenomenal job of maintaining their schools with the condition age of the equipment and the schools that we have here to work with. But there are things and equipment which we talked about that are aging, that just are at their useful life, that need to be replaced. Quite frankly, a lot of them which are beyond their useful life, that the district's done a great job keeping as long as they have. And those which we talked about earlier, the HVAC, the roofing, the windows, and some code compliance issues, which we'll talk a little bit tonight, came out at the high level, priority one items that are going to be addressed should this referendum move forward. So with that, I will turn it over to Barbara, let her talk about some of the specifics with the HVAC.
Make sure we can see everybody. So the major component of the referendum is the HVAC improvements. It's about $60 million. And it's going to be HVAC upgrades throughout the district, including air conditioning. As you know, many of the HVAC, much of the HVAC room is outdated, refrigerated, old, and needs to be replaced. Some of the other minor components of that replacement are going to be upgrading control systems and replacement of exhaust fans. And slide. There's some images of what your existing HV system looks like at the high school, the elementary, the Sampson Elementary School, and the Truman School. They're not in great shape. Some areas are not going to get HVAC improvements because they already are cooled or the equipment is fairly new, so it's not really required. And the other component of the referendum will be roofing replacement. That's $7.4 million approximately. Complete replacement at several of the schools and partial replacement at some of the other schools. So we'll bring all the roofs up to fairly current standards right now. And again, next slide, we have some photographs of the existing roofing. The tree at the high school, I don't think is supposed to be there, but we're going on the roof. And you have Wilson Elementary School and Middle School. And I will turn it over to Brendan to talk about the windows.
So, as Steve was alluding to earlier, just in terms of certain things being outdated, the windows being one of them, they've exceeded their life expectancy. And, if you're investing in the HVAC systems, you don't want all that heat to go out the window, for lack of a better word. So you'll be getting new windows across the district, with the exception of Arliff, which got new windows in 2018, and Truman, Eisenhower, which just got their windows replaced, or is getting their windows replaced this year. You guys are getting full replacement as per the bid last week. If you go to the next slide, so you can see the windows. It's a little difficult to just look at a window and say, okay, you know what, it's in bad shape. They're not. There's no obvious cracks or anything, but they are single glazing, and as I was saying before, the heat will go out the window. You want your envelope, your building envelope, to be strong, especially if you're going to be spending all that money on the HVAC. Next slide. And then, as the board president alluded to earlier, upgrading Sayreville School up into the 18 to 21-year-old program, there are certain code issues that we're kind of encountering at the moment. So just going through those upgrades. Next slide. The doors, having the full glass on them, it's not a code issue, but it is a security issue. So we're going to be changing the doors to get narrow glass in all the doors. The toilet, the urinals being on the floor, they need to be elevated as per code. And you can see on the bottom, I know it's a little difficult, it's dark, but there's no barrier-free access stalls in the toilet rooms at the moment. So we're going to be upgrading those to make them code compliant as well. I'll turn it back over to Steve.
So a lot of projects that are being proposed here tonight, and the total is roughly $99.8 million worth of cost. So what we worked with the district, we worked with the financial advisors to come up with a plan to figure out how to get this done and what that impact would be to the taxpayers. So the initial first probably 9 or so years, there's an impact that works out to be about $25 a month initially, but that will actually decrease over that 10-year period. And then you have debt that falls off. So it's retiring debt that's going to be paid off. And it drops significantly from that year from year 10-ish to the end of the life, which is a 20-year bond. It goes from $13 a month down to $6, and obviously then gets paid off at 0. So it continues to decrease from the beginning all the way through the end. It's the way the debt service is set up. So it makes it a little bit less of an impact over the period of time for that 20 years. I think over the 20-year life, it averages about $16 a month. The projects, should the board elect tonight to move forward, we would then start going to the Department of Education for approval, which we are expecting, hopefully, to receive up to 40% funding, which is what they're currently offered through debt service aid. The way that works is you have to bond for that full amount, the $99.8 million. You'll have your payments every year, and then every year as you make your payment, the state will give you up to that 40% to counteract that payment, and that's how that works, and the payment gets set. So we are hoping that all those projects that are submitted, because they are high priority items, will be funded at that percentage. We won't know that for sure until we make the submission to the Department of Education and actually get the approvals from the department. So it might be hard to read on this slide, but this is the breakdown of that $99.8 million throughout all the schools, and you'll see the columns set up with roofing, windows, interior code compliance, and then the new HVAC systems throughout. And as Barbara mentioned, the HVAC systems are the largest amount of this referendum. So of that $99.8 million cost, roughly 77.2 of that is HVAC upgrades. So this gives you the breakdown throughout. So the question happens is, what if this doesn't pass and doesn't move forward? What happens? Well, currently, you would have to burden the cost somehow to get these repairs done over time, which is going to be more costly because every year this doesn't get done, the costs continue to go up. But additionally, you would lose out on that 40% funding from the state. The only way that you get that 40% funding is through a referendum. So the taxpayers put up 60%, the state gives you 40%. If you don't have a referendum and there's no tax impact, there is no funding from the state. So that's the only way that works. It's the only type of funding the state offers right now. So from a timeline perspective, the next step would be board decides to move forward tonight. We would then start the process of submitting the applications to the Department of Education leading up to that September 29th vote. We would have to get all of those applications submitted to the state by March. They need a 6-month window for the review and the processing of the applications. So we would hope to start that in early January and start making submissions to the state before that March deadline. Then, should everything be successful in September, we would start with designs, and the way we were looking at it, again, is a lot of work. We're currently looking at this in 3 phases. So the phase 1 would start design immediately after a successful referendum in September, start design in October, and go out to bid sometime around February of 2021. And then each year thereafter, we would follow that schedule of design and bid with the work happening in the summertime of each of those years. So you'd have summer 21, 22, and 23 to complete all that work. And that's the current timeline that we're gearing towards. So why now? Well, prices continue to go up. We do have the potential for the 40% state funding that's being offered. It's not always available. There was a period of time from, I think it was about 2009 to 2013, where the state did not offer any state aid. So a lot of districts were putting off work that they couldn't get done because they weren't getting state support. So while it's available now, we want to take advantage of it. The retiring debt is huge. The fact that after the 9-10 year mark, the debt falls off, it basically cuts the tax impact in half. So you want to take advantage of it while you have the debt retiring. The interest rates right now are extremely low. So that's something to consider as well, that a lot of districts that have gone out for referendum that have been very successful in the fall, they're seeing rates well below what we've seen in the 2% range. For the last few years, they've always been a bit higher than that. So you're seeing very, very favorable rates. If you get favorable rates, because I will say the financial advisor, when she puts this tax impact numbers together, they are very conservative. So if you do get favorable rates, that tax impact could actually drop based on those numbers. That's why we say, you know, everything is approximate at this point, because until you close on a loan, you don't know where that's going to be. But also, having a project of this size, you capitalize on the economies of scale. So putting out 3 packages of mechanical bids that are going to be somewhere in a $20 million range, you're going to save money on those economies of scale as opposed to doing a little bit each year, putting $1 million each year, $1 million each year. Besides coming 100% out of your pocket, and get the savings, you actually can get a bigger savings by putting out bigger packages. So with all that together, that's why it's just the timing is right, and it's time to act now to get this done and help bring your district up to speed and up to that 21st century. The vote, January 29th, polls open 2 p.m. to 8 p.m. is what's being proposed. We will have a sequence of resolutions that would be on the agenda to adopt the question and the exact time of everything as it gets closer to the date, but this is currently where we stand now, and that's what we're looking for as far as what those times would be and what the question is comes later down the road. You have to have Department of Education approval before you can actually vote on the question, because that may change depending on your approval from the state. With that, any questions?
So Steve, it's been customary now with our new format to our board meetings that we ask our guests who speak to the board to sit down with the board so that the board can ask any questions. So if your team would like to come on up to the microphone over here at the table, I'll bring another chair so that you can do that.
Welcome.
Mr. Mr. Esposito, you said you have a question?
Yeah, I think we touched on this in finance, but I just want to make sure the board knows. There's no specific order to this work, am I correct? Because, I mean, the people I speak to out there, they say, get the air conditioning in first if you can. Is that a possibility even before the windows, although it's probably not the most?
And by the way, that's not a professional opinion, that's a request of parents.
That's a request of the
Yes.
parents, right. I mean, does it, I know you want to be economical and have the windows in first, but could you go the other way to make sure the kids are comfortable?
So it depends on the school. There are situations where the windows do go all the way to the floor and are actually connected to the units that are in the classrooms. So it does have to be phased. The short answer is yes, they could go first, but you're not going to put out a bid in one summer for the $77 million. It's just too much work to get done in one summer. So the HVAC really will get phased. It depends on which schools have to go first and how it has to get coordinated with the windows. And that part of the packaging hasn't been completely developed at this point.
Okay.
But we would look to do as much HVAC as we can per year. The other thing is the bidding window. The HVAC units and the windows are long lead time items. So the first year is going to be tough to get as much done in the summer. You'll get the bulk of it the second and third summer.
And Steve, I think what we talked about with our plan was addressing those schools with second floors first. They
Correct.
could be in phase one, those schools where kids are on those second floors.
Correct. That would be the goal.
Okay, thank you.
Other board members with questions? Must have been a great presentation.
Dr. Labby did it 7 times.
Well, and that's
17 times.
Well, I was only at 7, so I'm good.
Well, and for the benefit of the public, I mean, that's probably why we really
They
have
did
no
a far better
questions.
job than me, though, I must
We,
say.
we've talked about this in the Finance Committee numerous times. We've been before our architects before. Like I said, we've heard Dr. Labby give this speech numerous times. We could all give it in our sleep. So now let's just talk about the timeline now going forward. So assuming we approve this tonight, you're now going to get to work on the preliminary drawings. If you could highlight for the public what your life is going to be like for us between now and the September referendum.
Not much sleep.
Us neither.
No, so all kidding aside, the first step for us is we do have to do just schematic level drawings that indicate the scope of work and where it's happening at each school. And those get submitted with an application to the Department of Education. So we have to figure out exactly how many applications. We're going to need at least 1 application per school. Sellover will likely be 2 applications, just because there's an educational component to it and a non-educational component to it. The educational component requires a Department of Education fee for review once the referendum passes. So what happens is you always want to split that, because if you put it all together, their fee is based on the cost of the project. So sellover, I think, let's say, is $11 million, roughly. I have to get the exact number. You would be feed, if we did one application, you'd have a fee on the $11 million. The educational component might only be $2 million of that. So that's one we want to split to make sure you're not paying more than you have to. You're only paying for the education. The other ones could all be an application for each school, but we have to talk to the district and see how we want to do that, because if we want to have some flexibility in some of the scope, we might do additional applications. But what you'll probably see is either in the January or February board meeting, a series of resolutions that we'll provide you once we have the initial Department of Education numbers. We'll provide those to you with resolutions that have to be approved for us to even make that submission. And then we have to do the drawings, we have to do the applications, we'll have to do some educational specifications, and all that has to be submitted between now and March. Once everything is approved, and hopefully we hear, let's say, April or May, then it becomes a strong push for a campaign where we actually have real numbers, we have the actual approvals, and we'll work with the district on what those presentations look like from May till September, and how that campaign is going to happen. So there'll be some flyers, there'll be some talking points that we help put together for the district to share with the community. All that has to be discussed and figured out as far as what that looks like and who we're going to target that to when that happens. But there'll be a series of documents that we provide the district so that everybody's talking the same and has all the same answers and has all the information they need.
And for the benefit of the public as well, one of the questions we often get when we tackle a referendum such as this is, you've got this whole lag time between now and September 2020. Why can't the architects just design the whole thing so that when the referendum is approved, we go out to bid, and in January of 2021, we're constructing? And the answer is that they need to get paid for their services, and we don't have that kind of money, with the exception of approving the referendum. So we actually have to go, and in addition to that, we don't know, although we're optimistic, if the voters will approve the referendum. So we don't want to invest this much money into a project that may not get funding. So we need to go through a process where the architects will design preliminary specifications which are enough to cost out the project so that we know and can get Department of Education approval. And then going forward, after the referendum passes, they can get to work and invest the additional time to develop the detailed specifications to actually build and construct this thing.
Right, yeah, the Department of Education drawings are very, very high level, just pointing out where the scope is, so the state can see what it is we're doing, but there's no specs, like detailed specs or survey, things like that. The other thing is, there are districts, we actually just had 3 that had small portions that they knew if the referendum didn't pass, they had to move forward with, and they did take that approach and said, okay, well, we're going to pay you and take the risk, because if it fails, we have the money to do that portion, or we'll have to find the money to do that portion. In your case, you're right, there's a lot of work, and it's a big project to try to endure to do that ahead of time would be, without knowing if you're going to move forward with it is really difficult.
Now, as you spec this out, these are, as you mentioned, older buildings, even though they are well-maintained. What contingency did you build in for unforeseen circumstances?
So we built in 5% contingency, 15% contingency, of which 5% we leave for construction. So the other 10% is what we call a design contingency, because as we start getting into the detailed surveys, you have environmental testing that will happen. There might be some things that are uncovered. And then there might be things as we survey that we find, and so there's money to cover for that. And then the other 5% for construction, which makes up that whole 15 for unforeseens. Once you start taking windows out that have been there for 50 years, you don't know what you find, ceiling and the walls and so forth. And the same thing with the mechanical units. Sometimes you pull the mechanical units out and you don't know what's in the walls.
Don't say the A word.
Yeah.
What's that?
Don't say the A word.
No.
Now, we ran into an issue, I know when we did this particular project that you're sitting in, with commodity costs increasing dramatically. Copper, all the commodities that go into a building. Where are we currently in the market cycle for those items? And I know if you could predict commodities, you'd be investing in that drawing.
Right.
But where are we in the cycle, and what fluctuations can we expect?
Right, so because of our history of doing this, we've been doing this for over 66 years now. We've established some criteria of how the market's been. Now, obviously, some years it's been higher as far as inflation versus other years, but we've calculated a 5% inflation for each year that the phasings were set up, so that we're predicting that the first cycle isn't going to happen until 2021. So there's already a 5%. On top of the contingency, we have 5% inflation built in. The stuff that the projects that we're anticipating in 2022, there's 10%, and projects that in 2023 there's another 15%. Inflation in there. So depending on, like you said, I can't predict the future, but that's been historically worked for us in the past, and we found that all the bids have come in at or right below budget with those projections. So that's built in on top of the general contingencies.
Are you going to give us, not scale models, but like say before and after pictures so we can go and market it and say, look, this is what it's going to look like when we're done?
Yeah, so we'll have these discussions once we get through this, and we can have these discussions between now and March, which is fine. Usually we have a little committee with the administration, maybe a board member or two that discuss those types of things, and we can provide anything that you want. We generally, at a minimum, will provide a flyer, like a two-page, front and back flyer that gives very high-level information that you can hand out at every event that you have in the school that's easy to hand out. We also help develop the website that you can have a link on your website so the presentation gets saved there, the flyer gets saved there, frequently asked questions that we'll continue to update. As you receive questions and email them to the district, the administrators will give it to us. We can update it, provide answers so that they're all being answered and updated accordingly. And then what we call the Discovering the Facts, we put out there, so it gives very, very specific information as to what we're doing. And if somebody really wants to go in and read the detail of it, that would be there as well.
Okay, great.
So, and then any other information that you want to see before or after, projected, what we're planning on using, the type of thing, any of that could be done through that period of time.
That's great.
And Dr. Labber, we found in the past, if we get a slash after our SayrevilleK12.net specifically for the referendum, put that frequently asked questions page up there, it's very helpful.
We already have a referendum page
Awesome.
on the website. It's on the Board of Education page on the website.
Okay.
That was created when we started doing the presentation. So every presentation that we've done thus far at each school is on there. So that page is already set up. This presentation will go on that page as the next bit of information to provide.
Okay. Now we need a catchy name for that page. We got to come
I
up with-
believe
But
that
I'm sure you're
Mrs.
working on
Bloom
that.
has developed that already.
You liked it.
Cool the schools.
There we go.
Nice.
There's no electrical upgrades in this proposal because there's going to be handled.
There are some electrical upgrades related to the
HVAC.
HVAC upgrades, yes.
In fact, all of our grids are being upgraded because of this.
But it's all included in this? or is it included in
Most
this?
are, yeah. Most have some impacts electrical.
Did you get an answer to your question? Or, yeah. Okay.
That cost is rolled into the HVAC number because it was tied to it.
That's what I figured the answer was you were looking for, yeah.
Yeah.
All right, any other questions? All right, I think we're all set. Dr. Labby, anything else?
Yeah, great presentation.
All
Thank
right.
you, guys.
Thank you very much for coming out.
Looking forward to working.
And we are as
Likewise.
well. All right. Okay, we are moving on to board discussion, finance and infrastructure. Mr. Esposito.
He's ready.
Yeah.
All right. Mrs. Rubio, are you by any chance ready?
I got it.
Sure. There you go. Mrs. Rubio will cover for you.
Thank you.
It's a phenomenal presentation. You were captivated by it.
We were. Excuse my voice. If it goes, that's it. Student Achievement Committee meeting was held on November 26th. And our first topic of discussion was the high school academies, the STEM Academy and the Arts Academy. STEM Academy will be up and coming in September 2020. Admission, draft course sequence are things that have to be considered. The Arts Academy will follow in September 2021. Those two concentrations will be visual and performing arts. Our next select section was budget items for 2021. Grade 4 and 5 will be using Fontes and Pinnell. It will be rolled out. So we will have the benchmark assessments for grades K to 5. ESGI for kindergarten screening is an online program. And we are budgeting for new math textbooks for grades 6 and 7. Anything additional on that one?
No, the only other thing we talked about was the comparison, the 5-year trend of our test scores.
No, I meant just for the budget
For the
items.
budget, no.
Budget items was good. Next was the growth of the ESL program. 3 years ago, we had 132 ESL students. We are up to 185. So we will probably be looking for one more ESL teacher in next budget years, in the next budget year. The state assessment data was released on November 25th. Our 5-year trend data has us looking quite well. Is that an understatement?
That is the understatement of the day, I think, yes.
I'll defer to you for that one, Doctor.
Our increase in test scores over the past 5 years, as compared to other schools in the country, has been, in the county, has been quite good. I mean, you know, sometimes we have dips, but the 5-year trend is really significantly improved over 5 years. And when you compare us to the growth of some similar districts in the same 5 years, we've done quite well. So.
And I know that's a favorite.
And look, I mentioned the district by name when we were behind, so I think it's only appropriate that I mention the district by name when we're ahead. It was North Brunswick, and the reason I always look at North Brunswick is because size-wise, they're very similar to us. They're in our own county. Demographically, they're very similar to us, and we've always lagged North Brunswick, and I've always asked the question, why? What are they doing that we're not doing? And I'm not still not sure I know the answer, but I know that we're doing it, because the results at just about every single level have, over the last 5 years, not only increased, but have now gotten to a point where they've surpassed. And I think there's only 2 or 3 areas where we still got an opportunity. We're not going to stop there. We're going to continue going. You know,
Absolutely.
the next target we're going to set our eyes on is East Brunswick. But, you know, we're moving forward.
Well, let's look at that preschool class when we all have all our preschoolers.
Absolutely.
That's what I'm going to wait for.
Yeah. And then you mentioned the ESL program. So what's our primary language, or not primary, what's our majority, I shouldn't even say majority. What are the most number of students who are enrolled in ESL taking, speaking?
Primarily Spanish, however, our Arabic languages are a very close second.
Okay.
So those are the 2 majority languages, but we have about 30 languages.
30 languages among 182 students.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then you wonder why we only need 1 teacher.
Yeah, yes,
Right.
yes.
Right, well,
One more teacher.
right, we need 1 more teacher really district-wide. In October, when we started to see the increase, we actually moved a teacher who was housed only at the UES, and he does go to Eisenhower to take care of some of the classes there to assist with that. So we have 1 teacher at the high school, 1 at the middle school, 1 who travels between the UES and Eisenhower, and we have 1 who goes between Arlith and Wilson, and another 1 who does Truman and Eisenhower. So
And the 180 is K-12, right?
it's K-12, right, which makes it really difficult. We have more than 40, the teacher here has more than, at the high school has more than 40 students. I think there's 37 at the middle school. And then when we have teachers who have to travel between schools, we have to allow for travel time and so on. So that's not such an easy thing.
So basically 3% of our K-12 population, maybe a little less, but around 3%. All right, any other discussions on student achievement or Mrs. Rubio's report? All right, she gave you cover. You're ready to go.
Thank you, Karen. Okay, a couple things. The baseball field is looking awesome, going to be ready for opening day. The SUES parking lot is 100% complete. All our vestibules, the secure vestibules, are finished. Did we do the buzzers yet, Jimmy? Are we done with that? Are we still? Okay, so they're starting today, and that'll be complete, I'm presuming, relatively soon. The Truman and the middle school locker rooms are all done. Haven't seen them, but I'm told they look beautiful. Let's see, we started, or we're going to start shortly. We're not done? We're not done with them? Oh, I'm sorry. I thought I made a mistake. So the bids for these elementary secure vestibules are going to, if we haven't started them, we're going to start getting bids for those now, so they'll be ready for the 2020-21 school year. Let's see. Okay, we also, Mr. Coleman'sberger is getting bids for railings for our bleachers for the football stadium. Keep people safe going in and out. And as far as the high school gym, so could I talk about this? So we have enough in cap reserve.
It's on the agenda.
In what?
It's on the agenda.
It is on the agenda? Okay, it must have been. So I'll let you speak to that, but we're going to basically, I'll distill a little thunder, we're going to have air conditioning for the class of 2021 in case we get stuck inside the gym for graduation. And there's one thing I wanted to, I'm going to leave the co-op to you. Is that part of your presentation? No? Okay.
Just a small part in governance, yeah.
Okay, we'll talk about that later. And can I talk about the scoreboards?
Yeah. Oh,
Great.
I just got the figures on that, too.
You did? Oh, it's awesome. Great. Could you talk about it? Because, I mean, we're going to get, what, tell us.
Yeah, I mean, we discovered this company several years ago called Side Effects when we were investigating advertising. So basically, what they're going to do is they're going to purchase for us 2 scoreboards, one for the middle school, one for the high school, for softball and baseball, total cost of nearly $20,000, and we pay nothing. All we have to do is install them. That's our cost, but they are allowed to advertise on our scoreboards as well as our football stadium scoreboard and advertising on the fence within the football field. And once the advertising surpasses the cost of the scoreboards, we will then receive 50% of the advertising revenue. The only drawback is that it takes about, it's going to take close to 4 months for them to go do this, so we might not have the brand-new scoreboards for the spring seasons, but we will probably by late April or May, maybe even earlier, could be earlier, have brand-new scoreboards for free.
Great.
They advertise their own company? or
They find
advertise through other-
advertisers in the community. That's what their job is. Their job is to go out and find advertisers, and they go ahead and advertise on the scoreboards and so forth. However, they have to comply with our Board of Education policies with regard to advertising.
You could approve them then, or no?
Just like we do with our website advertisers,
So you-
I go ahead and approve it, because that's in part of our policy, and many school districts have the same policy. But we're real excited. I mean, getting $20,000 worth of scoreboards for nothing is awesome.
Well,
And they're really sharp, they're electronic. Jimmy asked that they be wireless, so they are wireless, so, you know, we don't need to configure wiring in it or anything to adjust them. You know, they're very state-of-the-art. They'll say Bombers on them, our logo will be on them. We're real excited.
Beautiful.
Like the Booster Club already has some on the fence around for games. Is that going to interfere with them?
Those
too,
are,
or-
those are portable ones, so we'll just ask that they move those. And they can still advertise, you know, for their booster clubs, but obviously, we're going to take precedence.
And this won't impact the Matt Wellness scoreboard, correct? The one that's at the athletic stadium?
Well, it's going to, we're going to put advertising below that,
Okay.
on the bottom portion of that.
Okay.
Nothing will distort what's already on there.
Okay.
But the below that, in fact, we had to take a look, Jimmy's working with me on still being able to make sure that if we put something there, we can still, heaven forbid we need to, get in and, you know, work on, because the boxes are down below. But we'll be able to do something, so we'll put some advertising below there. Naturally, we'll attach advertisement to the new scoreboards, but then have that advertising in the football stadium too.
And if the board isn't aware, Matt Wellna was a alumnus of Sayreville War Memorial High School. He was tragically killed at a young age, and the Matt Wellna Foundation donated the new athletic stadium scoreboard and has a memorial up there in memory of Matt.
Yeah, so nothing will change with that.
That's it. All right. Any questions on finance and infrastructure? Okay. Hearing none, we will move on to personnel. Mr. Walsh.
We had a brief meeting earlier today, and I'm proud to say we had an interview with a new candidate for our vice principal in the middle school, Sylvia Rago, and I'm real excited for everyone to meet her. She's going to do a great job.
There, she's pretty awesome.
So it sure seems
Muy fantástico.
Muy fantástico. Sí, sí. Okay, that's it. Any questions on personnel? Okay, Mrs. Bloom, President of Middlesex County School Boards and the Board of Directors.
I am no longer on the Board of Directors, as I now serve as the President of Middlesex County School Board.
Oh, I have to remove that.
I appointed my alternate, who is now on the Board of Directors. However, we did have our meeting on December the 9th, which Mr. Sykes did not attend because it was his birthday.
I get one night off.
That's all you get. The discussion, the educational piece that night was mental health. And I am always happy to say that when they talk about mental health and what's being required of schools, that we are already there. We already have the counseling, we already have the intervention. They talked about the Rutgers Cooperative, which we have here, and all of these things that are being suggested or kind of mandated by the state for checking on the mental health of students. We are already there.
Thanks to
So-
Mr. Nestor.
It always makes me happy to be able to say that. And there was a side discussion about caps and football coaches' salaries at Rutgers, and everybody was in agreement that it was ridiculous. So that's beside the point, but that was my little side piece. But it was a good meeting, and everybody learned a lot.
Okay.
Next meeting is February the 5th, I believe.
And then don't forget, our student recognition dinner is also at the end of March. That's the county student recognition dinner.
March 24th, we said.
There we go. Okay.
March 24th? Thank you.
So I'll start putting that together.
Yes, that's the student recognition dinner at Old Ridge. That's our big deal. We love that one.
Unsung hero.
Unsung heroes, thank you.
Delegate to the New Jersey School Board, so Mrs. Bloom, it's actually a good lead-in with regard to caps. The resolution that NJSBA passed with regard to allowing districts to exceed cap if they are seeing significant cuts in state funding has been picked up by State Senator Sweeney.
Was that Sweeney?
I think I got an audible on that one.
That was Sweeney.
Was picked up by Senator Sweeney, and he has sponsored legislation, and that is moving forward. So we expect that legislation to actually end up being signed into law. That's all I have under NJSBA.
And Mr. Sack, just a footnote with regard to legislation. I did hear today that that bill for restricting religious freedom for immunizations.
Yes.
That did stall in the Senate. That was not voted on.
Okay.
I know it passed through the House, but it did not, the Senate did not vote on it.
Okay, so for any of you watching, there was a bill that isn't, well, actually is a bill in the legislature that would drastically reduce the number of exemptions allowed for religious reasons with regard to vaccinating your children in order to attend public schools. And that legislation was also gaining steam, but now apparently it's stalled in the Senate and was not approved.
Correct.
Do you know where we are in the legislative cycle? Does that basically get thrown out now at this point at January, or?
I know that they didn't vote no, they just didn't vote on it.
Okay, they just didn't vote on it. All right.
So tell me, so if somebody comes into our school and says, I don't want to vaccinate my child because of X, Y, and Z, what do we do again?
They can't, well, right now, if someone does not want to vaccinate, it has to be for religious reasons. So if they refuse to be, for their child to be immunized, they have to state, it's for religious reasons.
So I'm sorry to interrupt, does that put our other students in harm's way?
It could potentially. I mean, if you watch the news and you see what the CDC put out, there was an incredible increase in measles. And the difficult part about that is, with the new measles strain that came out, very, very difficult to use conventional measures to treat kids with that, because the new measles, it kind of morphed. So the old ways that we treated measles before measles were almost wiped out, that's changed. So doctors have had to treat, a little bit differently. So that's the one scare that the CDC has put out, is that some of these diseases that have been pretty much non-existent for years because of immunization laws have all of a sudden started to come back. I believe there were, I think they said 182 cases of the measles in this country last year, and 19 of them were in New Jersey. So basically the bill would not allow people to ask for exemption from immunization requirements due to religious reasons.
Right, but if
So they no longer be able to use religious reasons as a means of exempting from being immunized. However, that struck a chord with parents because that's a very personal thing for parents. That's your parenting rights. You have a right to decide what you should do with your child, whether you immunize or not your child. And then it falls into, well, you have religious freedoms in this country too. Are you, in a sense, taking those away? So that's the debate that's going on right now in Trenton, Mr. Esposito.
Okay, thank you for that update.
Yeah.
And one of the versions that I saw, I don't know if it's the latest version or not, basically would allow for a religious exemption under limited circumstances where a member of the clergy of that particular faith issued a notarized statement indicating that it is a requirement. But right now, as I understand it, a parent can just simply say, I've got a religious objection, and that's sufficient.
Correct.
So I could be Roman Catholic, even though that's not a requirement of my religion, and just say I have a religious exemption in.
Well, it could be a moral objection.
And it could also be a moral objection. It would completely eradicate the moral objection as being a valid reason.
So that debate is the rights of people as opposed to the safety of children.
Right.
So that's kind of the tug of war that's going on right now.
Well, there would still be health exemptions. I mean, there are some kids who are
correct.
compromised and cannot get vaccinated. So that would still exist.
The
You're
last
not always
version of
going
the
to
bill
have
I saw would
100%
still
of
exist.
Yeah, you're not always going to have 100% of your students vaccinated. That's not going to happen.
Correct.
And is there, if that becomes New Jersey law, that's a non-issue for us. We just have to follow it. We cannot.
We have to comply with the law, correct, yeah.
Any other questions on legislation or New Jersey school boards? All right, then we're moving on to public participation. On agenda items only, if you wish to speak, please come to the microphone, state your name and address for the record. If you wish not to be photographed, please let us know.
Drew's looking, there's nobody out there.
Anybody? Okay. And also, I think legally, I'm required to indicate that this is also the opportunity, this is the public hearing on the superintendent's contract as well. So if you have any comments regarding the superintendent's contract, now would also be the time. Okay, Ms. Hill, if you could note in the minutes that we had the hearing and there were no public comments regarding the superintendent's contract.
Not a problem.
Thank you. We'll close public at this time, and we'll move on to the superintendent's report. Dr. Labby, major items to report.
Okay, and obviously, we begin with number 11, where we're asking you to propose the scope of the referendum to address district-wide facility improvements at a cost of $99,793,409. And it's broken down with regard to window replacement, roof replacement, and, of course, HVAC additions and replacements. You can find that on page 3. Number 12 and 13, we're asking you to approve to pay the Spiesel architectural firm for professional services for the secure retention vestibule at the Wilson Elementary School, and for the submission of that vestibule project plan to the Department of Education. You can find those both on pages 3 and 4. Number 14, we're asking you to approve a resolution to pay again the Spiesel architectural firm for professional services related to the HVAC at Sayreville War Memorial High School. You can find that on page 4, and Mr. Esposito referenced that just a moment ago. Basically, what we asked to do was to pull from the referendum the gymnasium HVAC replacement, so that we could get that done immediately. If you've ever had the unfortunate experience of sitting through a commencement ceremony, an 8th grade commencement ceremony in the gymnasium in June, or a high school graduation ceremony in June, it is intolerable. So yes, we do want to go ahead and replace our HVAC systems, and as was noted by our architects just a moment ago, that's going to take some time, even when the referendum's approved. We want to get ahead of that so that we can get the HVAC in the gymnasium ASAP. That allowed us actually to put more money, because the referendum amount stayed the same, but there were some rooms like the Samsel Gymnasium and the Samsel Cafeteria and the auditorium here at the high school that were not in the referendum. By doing the gymnasium by ourselves and not as part of the referendum, we were able to conclude those rooms now in the referendum. So definitely a win-win for us. And although we're going to think very positively and optimistically, heaven forbid the referendum does not pass, we still would have HVAC in our gymnasium moving forward, so that if we do have inclement weather, we'll be able to have our graduations environment. Number 15, we're asking you to award the bid for the window replacements at the Eisenhower Elementary School, which came in significantly lower than we thought, which has enabled us now to replace all of the windows. If you remember, originally we were only going to replace half of them. Now, because the bid came in so low, from panoramic window and door, we're actually able to replace all the windows this year. And as you note, from the referendum, those costs for the second half of the window replacement were removed from the referendum, which again allowed us to include some of those other rooms in the referendum. You can find that on page 5. And number 16 and 17, which can also be found on page 5, we do like to mention to you some incredibly generous donations that we received. So we did receive a great donation from Costco, which we're very appreciative for. And we'd like to thank Mr. Howard as well from the Future Business Leaders of America. He helped to leverage that donation. So thank you to Mr. Howard and all of our FBLA students. And then we also would like to accept a really great donation from the Melina Cuisine Restaurant. They did donate some furniture that we're going to use in our 18 to 21-year-old program at Slover. And I would like to thank our campus security monitor, Frank, at the Slover School, who helped to leverage that donation as well. And that's it for finance and infrastructure. Any questions? Moving ahead on governance, we do have a first reading for several policies. One's a new policy. and maybe Mr. Sayak might want to comment a little bit on that. And then the others are just revisions to previously existing policies. They can find them on page 16. I'll run through it, Mr. Sayak, and then we'll go back to you. Numbers 3 and 4, it was referenced earlier, again by Mr. Esposito. This is commensurate with Finance and Infrastructure Motion 24. So governance 3 and 4 are interrelated with Finance and Infrastructure Motion 24. So we're asking you to approve the submission of cooperative sports program applications for field hockey, football, wrestling, as well as our Air Force Junior ROTC program. With regard to the sports, those are applications that have to be submitted not only to the Greater Middlesex Conference, but to the New Jersey Interscholastic Athletic Association. We need board approval in order to do that first. For the Air Force Junior ROTC program, we do not need, naturally, that approval. We just would need your approval. So basically what we're asking is for you to allow us to enter into an agreement with the South Amboy Public School District that would allow South Amboy students who would like to participate in our field hockey program here at the high school, our football program here at the high school, as well as our wrestling program, and of course our Air Force Junior ROTC program here at the high school at a cost of $150 per student per activity. And you can find that on page 16, as well as going back at Finance and Infrastructure Motion 24. I believe that, I want to say that's on page 5. And then finally, number 16 and 17, actually, I'm sorry, finally, number 5, we're asking you to approve a delayed opening schedule at the high school. For many years, when we had either any form of testing, particularly NJSLA testing, we've had our kids in some form of abbreviated day in which they spend an exorbitant amount of time in periods 1 and 2 while the other kids are being tested. It's really not the best use of their time. It becomes sometimes a security issue too, because you have a lot of kids here in the cafeteria. We feel that their time could be much more productive at their homes. So we are asking you to approve a delayed opening schedule so that the kids that are being tested for NJSLA can come to school and be tested, and all of our staff members can participate in proctoring. And then at the conclusion of testing, the remainder of the students that are not being tested could come in and have an abbreviated schedule. And that's it for governance. And Mr. Sack, do you have anything to add with regard to number 2, the first reading of policies and regulations?
Yeah, 2 things. So first of all, the abbreviated schedule that you cited, that is a direct outcome of Dr. Labby being at the high school. One of the things I referenced earlier about things that you learn when you're in a building that you can then take back to the district level. For years, we've never had a delayed opening on testing days, and he realized how unproductive it was, and that's why we're now doing it. With regard to the policies, I'll just highlight a few, and then we can talk if you have any questions. We have clarified our home instruction. We've clarified, our home instruction. We've clarified our home instruction policy with regard to participation in athletics. The policy basically permitted the participation of homeschooled students to be involved in our athletic program, as well as any charter school students, et cetera. But it was just simply permissive to say that they may be involved. And Dr. Labby had a question of, well, does it require board approval? Does it not require board approval? So we've made it very clear that we are authorizing homeschooled students to be able to participate in our athletic programs. And it was interesting, we were just at an athletic banquet, and one of our students stood up there, and we didn't even know this until he said it, but he had commented that he's actually not a Sayreville student, he is homeschooled, and at the time that he chose to get involved in this particular sport, we were only one of 6 districts in the state that allowed homeschool students to participate in athletics. And when you think about it, you know, as much as we think the Sayreville education is the best education you can get, if a parent does choose to homeschool their child, they're still a taxpayer in the community and should still have the ability to take advantage of whatever services we offer. And it helps the student, and as Dr. Labby indicated, it's just the right thing to do. Also under awards for achievement, in response to the Superintendent's Parent Advisory Council, we've also now expanded our varsity letter awards to include other non-athletic activities such as marching band, theater, chorus, what am I missing? Odyssey of the Mind.
FBLA, DECA.
So basically, any opportunity where a student either performs or competes. That's the criteria for the extracurricular activity to now qualify for a varsity letter as well. And the criteria for awarding varsity letters in each individual activity would be authorized by the coach or advisor, and of course approved by the superintendent of schools or his or her designee. Did I miss any others?
I think those are the substantial ones.
Okay. Any questions on the policies?
I have some.
Sure.
I just have a quick question on the delayed opening. How is that going to work with busing?
We're going to be able to make it work. It
Okay.
might, it's going to naturally, potentially cost us a little bit more, but
you have to do
we've
two
planned
rounds,
for
right?
that, and we'll be okay.
Okay.
It's over 4 days. We had a couple of different models that we looked at. One was for 3 days, one was for 6 and 8 days, and we felt that the model that would work best without causing the most disruption to the education of our students would be the 4-day model. We might incur a little bit more, of an expense with regard to doing this, but it won't be substantial, and it's well worth it.
Oh, yeah. You don't have to sell me. I've been here. I lived through it.
So when you're talking about like homeschool students being able to participate, you mentioned because they're a taxpayer in Sayreville as well. Would that apply to people who are in private schools if they didn't have a sport or activity in the private school that they went to because they're members and taxpayers in Sayreville?
I would assume that it would, according to the policy, the way it's written.
Okay.
Right.
That just came into my mind when you said that.
Yeah.
I had a question about I had a few questions.
Sure.
Well, and I would add one thing to that. NJSIAA may not permit that. If you're going to a St. John's Vianney, you're not going to be permitted by NJSIAA
No, I meant
to
if they
participate in
didn't have
athletics.
something there.
Huh?
If we had something they didn't, a club or something.
Yeah, but that would have to be, we'd have to make sure that would be something that the NJSIAA would agree to.
And our policy does indicate that it's subject to NJSIA approval.
Like, we've had athletes that go to that Middlesex School Academy.
Right.
They don't
Right,
have any
yes,
sport.
then they
Right.
participate, yeah.
So as long as you live in town and you don't have the opportunity because you're
Correct.
either homeschooled or in a school that has not. Okay, just a question. The kindergarten age for the admission, is that is there a state guideline specifically, or is that determined by the district?
Actually, there is. There was
Yeah.
guidance that was issued from the
Yeah.
Department of Education suggesting, and it's not, I don't think, a mandate, but it was suggesting.
Strongly
that all-
recommending.
Yes. Strongly suggested that all districts.
And
go
that
to
also is
October 1.
intertwined with our preschool expansion aid, by the way.
Right.
That also strongly recommends that both the preschool requirement is congruent with the kindergarten requirement, and it strongly recommends that be October 1st.
So that was actually a correspondence, it wasn't directly to Sayreville, but it was a general correspondence that Dr. Labby received to all districts suggesting that we look at our
I
policy.
personally think it should be even sooner than that. I think it should be September 1st personally, but that's why I was asking if it. I had a question about the immunizations. We already talked about that. There was something about health examinations that said, pupils who enter the district shall have a medical examination. But then on the back of that page, it says something about that parents can opt out of having an examination. And one of the things was as required as a condition of attendance. So I felt like that went back to the first paragraph. I'm not sure if I'm understanding that. Can you opt out of having a physical to come to school?
So I got the policy up here, so, examination conducted.
And I wasn't sure if that was all part of the law or that was separately, like the immunization thing I know is separate, but that's part of the same policy, so that's what I'm just wondering.
If any non-emergency or invasive physical physical examination or screening. So I would not consider a physical an
But-
invasive.
Right.
Right, but so is there something invasive that's required as a condition of attendance?
Well, I mean, one, yes, if you're found under the influence of a substance.
Oh, okay, I didn't take
Yep,
it like that.
you
I took
can't
it
come
like
back
just
until, until you
That's not how I
have
interpreted
that.
it.
You were thinking about admission,
Yes,
not like daily.
yes, that's why
yes.
I was
Yeah.
confused, but that makes
Yeah.
better sense then, okay. Cool, well, I asked that.
Okay.
And then I think my last question was, for the extracurricular activities, it was good disciplinary standing, A and B. Is this for all grades, or is this just for the high school?
Hang on, I'm just pulling it up. Extracurricular.
Is this pertaining to getting the varsity letter?
No, it was.
Just access to
just-
educational programs, right?
Right, I think it was just, right, joining any extracurricular, and it says the good disciplinary standing shall mean a pupil not eligible, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, that's,
What
Is
what
that-
page?
I'm just
I think
asking,
it
is that-
applies
is
to
that
the whole
throughout all
district, but
grades?
what page are you on? Just so I want to make sure that's.
I'm on page 3.
Page 3, okay.
Under
Oh, good disciplinary standing, okay.
Because, I'm only asking because then in the next part where it says good academic standing, it talks about specifically freshmen. So it led me to believe that maybe in middle school, that's not an issue because incoming freshmen are automatically eligible to participate. So I'm just curious, does that mean that it starts in high school?
So no, it's two different things. So they have to have good disciplinary standing regardless of where, the extracurricular activity is held.
Okay.
The academic standing, and that's existing policy language, but I'm guessing the background on that is they're coming to the high school, they're getting a fresh start, it's a new school. So rather than then going back to the 8th grade and holding them accountable for something that occurred in the 8th grade, we're saying, look, as you come in a freshman, from an academic standpoint, it's a fresh start for you.
Okay, so is there academic standing in middle school requirement or no?
So.
For sports?
For sports or for extracurricular activities? I understand the transition from one school to the other, but I'm saying like within. when
Yeah,
you're
that
still in
paragraph
high
seems to be specifically, the academic piece seems to be specifically for the high school.
I mean, naturally, if a child is not passing their classes, it might be a good decision to have a meeting with their parents to discuss, does the child have the time to participate in an extracurricular activity if they're not able to spend the time to focus on their classes?
school. I agree with you, I
But
just think it's.
I don't think there's anything written, with regard to middle school participation in either athletics or extracurricular activities that requires, good academic standing. But I do think that, in general, that is probably a discussion point between our administrators, our teachers, and our parents. If a child is not being successful in the class because they're not putting in the time, then we don't, want them to put more time into something else that would, distract them from doing well in the class.
Well, I think that would be a great suggestion, but if it's not policy, can the parents say, well, I disagree, we don't expect, we're fine with this. They could play all they want, like, then what?
So look, do we,
I mean, we
I
can
was just saying,
go back and
do you want
revise
to
that
talk
if
to
you
Mr.
want.
Gluhowski?
We can
and
get
see
Mr.
if-
Gluhowski and, yeah.
Well, I'm not suggesting like right here, but.
No, I know,
You want
yeah.
you want to talk to Mr. Gluhowski, and if there's
Sure.
modified language, we can add it in as an additional provision. for
And
the
we can talk to Ms. Badami, yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Okay, so we'll take that one back, and then I'll notify the board if there's any modifications to that. It won't need to go through 2 readings again, we can approve it with the modification at the next meeting.
Okay, I have one more, I'm sorry. The home instruction one, that says that the period of absence must be expected to be longer than 10 days. Has that always been 10? Because I thought I remembered 5 at one point when we were at school, and I thought 10. It's always 10? Okay. Wait, that was it.
You had also mentioned typos? Are there-
I did, but I was going to tell you that privately.
Okay, all right, you can,
Do you want to know?
is it one or is it multiple?
There's 2. But that,
Okay.
we can talk about it later.
Let me know offline and then we can do this.
I was not even going to bring that up.
See, this is the problem, you get too many teachers on the board.
Listen, I have
Trying to
no
bring that up.
problem someone proofreading my policies. I don't take offense to that at all.
At least someone does.
So, exactly.
In print.
All right, I think we're good on governance. We've governed.
Excellent. So moving ahead to personnel, normally, I focus my discussion when someone's leaving the district on someone that is retiring. It's unfortunate that we do have occasions in which people leave our district on, making that decision themselves to go to another place. But we don't normally talk about that person at our meetings. But I would be remiss if I didn't say a few words about Ms. Johnson, who is leaving our district to go to another district. And while, that is disappointing and we don't want, any of our staff members to leave us for someplace else, I do know that it was an incredibly difficult decision for her and one that was 100% family-oriented. And so that being said, I feel the need to express how much of an incredible loss it's going to be for us. Ms. Johnson is a bomber, and I know will always be a bomber no matter where she goes. I've actually known Ms. Johnson since 1992, John? 1991 or 92, when she became a manager for the Sayreville War Memorial High School football team. That's when I actually met Ms. Johnson. So I've known her that long, and I was incredibly delighted when I returned to the district back in 2014 and realized that Ms. Johnson was working in the district. In fact, this is the only school district that Ms. Johnson has ever worked with since she graduated from Sayreville War Memorial High School and then, of course, college. She's devoted and dedicated herself to the children, the teachers, the community of Sayreville for many, many years, and that needs to be made known. Her sense of dedication to this community is astounding, and I just can't thank her enough for all that she did for everyone, most particularly our children here in Sayreville, over the many, many years that she served this district impeccably. And I'd like to wish her the absolute best moving forward, in her new employment. So moving along, that segues us to another person that I'd like to talk about. Of course, on items numbers 12 and 13 and 33 and 34, on pages 21 and 22 in the addendum, we're asking you to approve the hiring of new certificated and non-certificated staff. And one of those staff members is a very special staff member. She is listed there as the replacement for Ms. Johnson as vice principal at Sayreville War Memorial High School. At the Sayreville Middle School. She is currently a Spanish teacher at the Sayreville War Memorial High School, and that's Ms. Sylvia Rego, and she's here with us tonight. I've had the opportunity to know Sylvia for many years as well. Close to 9 years I've known Sylvia. And, as a Spanish teacher, I was always incredibly impressed by her instructional competency, her proficiency with curriculum and content standards. Moreover, I have always been incredibly inspired by her child-centeredness. When you have an opportunity to interact with Ms. Rego, you learn real fast why she is an educator. It's because she adores children, and she loves working with them. And she's worked with children at the middle school level as well as at the high school level. And in fact, in her career, she's probably spent an equal amount of time at both levels working with children. She also has this infectious enthusiasm and this incredible energy. And when she interviewed, in a pool of some incredibly talented educators here in Sayreville, I am so impressed by the number of applicants that, we had an opportunity to interview in round one and then in round two. But it was her enthusiasm, her energy, her adoration for children, her competency, her proficiency, and most of all, her leadership potential that blew everybody out of the water that had an opportunity to interview her, including me. And I can honestly say to you that after interviewing all the candidates that we interviewed, and there were some magnificent candidates and very strong candidates who I think have great potential as administrators here in Sayreville, we could not find a better person to recommend to you to replace Ms. Johnson as the vice principal at the Sayreville Middle School. That being said, also on personnel, we're naturally asking you to approve some transfers. That's on items number 14 and 15, which can be found on page 22 and 23. And as Mr. Sayak noted at the beginning of this meeting, we're also asking you to approve the contract extension of the superintendent. And that's it for personnel as well as my highlights.
Okay. I'd also like to extend my thanks to Ms. Johnson as well. You categorized it very well. Yes, she is a bomber, and she's been very dedicated to this school district. But the other thing I like to think about, we've had people who have gone on to other opportunities, developed an additional skill set, and you never know, they may return in some other capacity. So rather than goodbye, it's just till we see her again. And also, Ms. Rago,
It's a Billy
congratulations.
Joel line, isn't it?
I'm sorry, what?
It's a Billy Joel line, I
There you
think.
go.
He's quoting Billy Joel.
And Ms. Rago, congratulations. We know you will do well. I think Dr. Labby actually did a better job recognizing you as to why you should be in the position than I did even recognizing him as to why he should be in the position. So he outdid me again.
And I'm very jealous.
But congratulations. We know you will do well. And I also echo all of Dr. Labby's comments regarding your competency and what you bring to the district. In particular, since I've had a chance to get to know you as well, your energy level. Definitely a passion for kids and a lot of positive energy. So best of luck in your new position. Any other comments on the superintendent's report? Okay, at this time, I'll entertain a motion to approve the superintendent's report.
So moved.
By Mr. Walsh, do I have a second?
Second.
By Mrs. Bloom. Comments or remarks on the superintendent's report? Okay, hearing none, roll call, Ms. Hill.
Mr. Balca?
Okay, A number 11, A number 14, and D number 26, I'm going to vote no on, yes on all our items.
Mrs. Bloom?
Ms. Hill, I'm required to abstain on number 26, page 26, and also on page 27 on Kevin Bloom. Yes on everything else.
And that was D26, correct?
The superintendent's contract, yes.
Mr. Esposito?
Yes.
Mrs. Kenny?
I need to abstain on C, 3, and 4, and yes to everything else.
Ms. Rubio?
Yes.
Mr. Walsh?
Yes.
And Mr. Sayak?
Yes. Okay, the superintendent's report is approved. And we'll open it up to public participation on any item concerning the district. If you wish to speak, please come to the microphone. Looks like we've got Mr. Glahuski, Mr. Rubino, they all want to speak. Hearing no public, we'll close public at this time. Our next board meeting is Thursday, January 2nd. It is our board reorganization meeting. Ladies and gentlemen, staff, members of the community, students, Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, Joyous Kwanzaa, and if you don't celebrate any of those, a Happy Winter Solstice. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
By Mrs. Bloom, do I have a second?
Second.
By Mr. Walsh, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
Happy holidays, everyone.